Alright. So ordinarily when you get to this point in the game, you don't have all the characters unlocked yet. Because this is a new game plus, I think, a legendary version of the campaign. We have a lot more possibilities here. So, for instance, you know, Deadpool, who doesn't get unlocked until later, you know, Deadpool, who wouldn't get unlocked until later in the game, we can put on this pro registration team. Miss Marvel wouldn't be unlocked until later in the game. But again, this is a legendary new game plus run, so we're not worried about that. What I am worried about is getting achievements, and there's an achievement for letting Iron Man lead. Well, I say an achievement. There's a badge for letting Iron Man lead the pro registration heroes on a map, and it doesn't necessarily require the Civil War to have started in order to pull this off. So yeah, we're gonna be doing more Iron Man stuff. And that should bring us to the second announcement for Phase 4 that they made, which was in the second movie in that group, was the Eternals. And the Eternals are... It'll be interesting, and it'll be interesting because nobody knows what exactly we're looking at with the Eternals here. We're not even sure. I mean, based on the casting choices and the players that they said they're going to be playing, there's been some gender swapping going on, and the one Eternal that I sort of had a handle on, as far as just someone who'd been around the most, was Cersei, because she was with the Avengers for a while in the early 90s. I don't know who they've cast as her. I don't even know if she's going to be one of the Eternals in the movie, because Angelina Jolie, who I think is probably the easiest person to recognize who's involved with the Eternals movie, she's going to play Thena. And in the Neil Gaiman run on the Eternals, you know, Thena is very much a mother figure to some other characters. So I understand the appeal of that particular role to Jolie, but it wouldn't have been a surprise necessarily to see her as Cersei. Salma Hayek also cast in this movie. Also not impossible to have been Cersei, but she's playing a different character as well. That one, again, with the Eternals, I don't know enough about the various characters to, you know, say. You know, what we're looking at here. Okay, these missiles are probably doing more damage to me than they are to the enemy, and so I probably need to stop using them. As we go around looking for the Tinkerer's base here. So I don't know who the villains are going to be in the Eternals. I mean, the basic story behind the Eternals is that when the Celestials, the big powerful beings of the Marvel Universe, of whom Ego the Living Planet was one of them as far as the MCU is concerned, the Celestials kind of populate the Marvel Universe with life, and for the Earth, they populated it with three kinds of life. There were the humans, you know, who were kind of okay. And then there were the deviants, who were sort of the unloved children, the sort of evil underground children. And the Eternals, who, you know, were sort of the perfect children of the group, responsible for keeping the deviants in check, also responsible for protecting Earth from outside threats. And the problem that the Eternals ran into, or at least I think, is that periodically they would go to sleep and they would lose hold of their identities. At least I think that's the issue with them. But they're not active and in the fray all the time, even though you kind of expect that they would be. And they're, for all intents and purposes, immortal. So that they've been involved in history and they've been involved in the story of man for a long time. And some of the sort of myths and legends that we associate with heroes and demigods were actually roles that were being filled by the Eternals. I guess the easiest one to point out is Cersei. Even though she spells her name differently, the character spells her name differently than the enchantress from, you know, Homer's The Odyssey. Cersei is actually Cersei from that story. And we're finally making our way into the Tinkerer's den here. But you know, you get a lot of freedom to do stuff, you know, with a group like the Eternals that nobody's really that familiar with. I mean, I guess one of the best comparisons I've seen is the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise, where the Guardians, you know, the characters the Guardians have in the movies don't necessarily represent the characters they are in the comics. It's kind of a cool move there with Iron Man. I think it was that Deadpool that we teamed up with to do that? And yes, I'm scrounging for health from boxes. I'm sure I mentioned it previously. There is an achievement for breaking a certain number of boxes. I do not know if... I can't remember if I was going for that at this particular moment in time, or if I was just breaking boxes in order to try to add some health. But, you know, that's the Eternals. And I don't know, I mean, when I think of, like, the things that are coming out, I don't know that the Eternals will necessarily draw me in. And the next thing I think on the docket, I think, is the Loki miniseries, which is going to follow Loki after he grabs the Tesseract in the reimagined world of the Avengers that you saw in Endgame. I'm not really sure what he's going to be doing with it. But, you know, maybe people just like them some Loki kind of thing. Alright, we're going to change teams because we've gotten through an entire map. This is now technically a slightly different map. So I'm going to try to focus on doing a Spider-Man achievement, something like that. Getting more tutorial stuff. Our team right now is the team that talks too much group here. So we've got Deadpool, we've got the Human Torch, and we've got Ben Grimm. So other than Deadpool, every one of these characters has been a member of the quote-unquote Fantastic Four, you know, at one point in time. And we just need to push some stuff over. I don't know why Ben Grimm's stuck in the wall. The curvature of the floor seems to be playing with the thing, kind of preventing Spider-Man from doing anything terribly useful. There we go. Tiny amount of experience, another data disk. You know, we're still looking for those radio jammers. So I think that my reasoning behind this group is Spider-Man has an unlockable where if he does enough combos with Johnny Storm, I think it either unlocks the Iron Spider costume or it unlocks one of his other boosts. But that's sort of the rationale behind having this team. So if there is a chance to do a fusion, we're gonna do it between Spider-Man and the Human Torch. So, I don't have a lot to say about the Loki miniseries. I'm not going to see any of the miniseries. I just won't have the capability to. So I guess the next movie on the docket then becomes Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Shang-Chi is another character I don't have a lot of experience with. I mean, he apparently is, if you look at him, he looks like a sort of Bruce Lee, sort of Marvel version of Bruce Lee kind of thing, or person. They're going to connect him to the Mandarin. I don't know if that's something that existed in the comics themselves. And I also question, I'm not really sure what the point of using the Mandarin. I guess having more villains is always a good thing, and the fact that he's an Iron Man villain post-Iron Man, so what else are you going to use him for? You know, just maybe killing him off isn't a big deal because you can't have the Iron Man sort of Mandarin scene that you were looking for. Now, my familiarity with Shang-Chi, I guess, is just his appearance in Shadowland as part of the team that got together to take down a hand-possessed Matt Murdock. So they could, you know, there's probably lots of things they could do in that movie, but Shang-Chi seems slightly out of place because I mentioned the Shadowland connection. You know, he seems like a guy who would make much more sense if he could interact with Danny Rand, Luke Cage, Daredevil. You know, these characters who we had so, you know, in the Netflix series, and who one day maybe we'll get back. when whatever contractual obligation Disney has to allow to happen before they can start doing it on their own. But you know, the Shang-Chi taking place in China, possibility of including the Mandarin. I guess there's other characters who could theoretically include. I mean, if the Mandarin is going to get his traditional alien spaceship base, I mean, Fin Fang Foom is not exactly out of the realm of possibility.
So much for your president's friendly words to me. Or does he even know you're here?
You got a simple choice,
A much more reasonable choice, maybe Radioactive Man, like the original Radioactive Man, who was Chinese in origin. And I get the feeling that Shang-Chi's movie is going to be China-centric, which may do very well in the international box office for that reason. But, you know, it's something to consider as we keep going through